In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a small project using the Kawandi method. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts, and today we are going to be using some hand stitches to make a small project using what is called Kawandi style. Now, if you're not familiar with that, Kawandi is the name that the Siddhi people of India and Pakistan give to the type of project we're going to be doing today. So they use an improv method, they use recycled fabrics and hand stitching to create quilts. Today we're making a small project, and the reason we're doing that is to learn the technique. I always think it's a good idea when you're learning something new to make something small so you understand the technique before moving on to a bigger project. So this is what we're actually making today. So you can see all the hand stitching on it. I've got a button in the center. This is actually handmade button, handmade in Africa, and I have another one I'm going to be showing you today as well. And we've got some batting and we've got backing on the back. You can see all my stitches on the back. So let's talk about what we need exactly for this project and how to start things off. Okay, so we know we're going to need fabric. So you can use some of your scrap fabrics. I have 4 pieces of fabric. Depending on how you create yours, you may need more. 4 is a good starting point. You need some batting as well and backing. I'm just using some muslin here. You're also going to need, of course, some embroidery thread. I'm using some Wonderfill, they're number 8 pearl cotton, and I've got some of it already threaded up here. I've got a couple different needles. One is a milliner's needle, because when I do French knots, I like to use a milliner's needle because it easily pulls through all the little knots that are being formed. And then I've got a crewel needle as well. I've got some thread heaven, some thread conditioner, my needle threader, and of course some scissors are always important. And then, of course, the most important thing is glasses if you need them. I don't need them right now, but I will when I come to the stitching part. So let's talk about how to create this. When you take your backing fabric, you're going to cut it 1 inch larger than the finished size of your little tiny mini quilt in this case. All right, so for example, my little project here is 4 inches square, so I've cut my backing 5 inches by 5 inches. Then you need batting. So this is just 100% cotton batting. You can use 80-20, cotton polyester, even wool, cotton, whatever you want to put in there. Good way to use up scrap batting. Your batting is cut to the size of your finished block. So I said I wanted that to be 4 inches. So my batting is 4 inches by 4 inches. So all I'm doing is I'm just centering that batting in the center-ish of my backing fabric. My backing fabric would be wrong side up. Hard to tell with this kind of fabric, right? All right, so now, actually I can leave that here. I'm going to move this out of the way because I want to do some pressing next. So what I want to do is I want to press the edges of my backing. I just got to get my iron going again. I want to press those edges in towards the center. Okay, so let me move this over here. All right, so I'm going to start, doesn't matter where I start, any side, right? They're all the same length, doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to bring that in, all right? Bring the raw edges in, and we're going to give them a press. I'm not sure if my iron's going to be hot enough right now because it went into sleep mode on me. There we go. Oh, it did a good job. Nice. Okay, now we're going to the next side. So you want to make sure that as much as you can, that you're going to line up those finished edges, that they're not going to be kind of overlapping the previously folded edge and pressed edge, I should say. So let's try and do that one. So this is going to give you a nice finished backing already, right? No binding required on this project at all. So that's nice. And even, if you're making something this small, even your backing can be from some scrap fabric, right? 5 inches isn't all that big, depending on your scrap situation. For me, not that big. All right, so we get something like that, okay? Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Perfect-ish is perfectly fine, but it is all finished along the edges, as you can see. So this is our building block, okay? Our base, our foundation to make this block using the Kawandi technique. So the next thing I want to do is start building the top. And we're going to do some pressing of edges there as well. Now, I already have them pressed because I didn't want you to have to sit and watch all that, but I will explain how that works. So I'm going to take them off in the order that they go on. Okay, so you can see I've got my foundation here, right? And we're going to start adding to it. So here's an example. I'll just give you an example here of the same kind of thing you're doing with the backing and the batting, is you're folding the raw edges in. But depending on how you lay out your fabrics, you don't have to fold under all the edges. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but who wants to take that time, right? So you're going to start in the upper left-hand corner with a piece of fabric. So I've got a rectangle here, and I needed to fold under one side and the adjacent side, okay? Those two folded edges are going to go on the top and the side, because what you're doing is overlapping pieces as you go along. All right, my next piece is going to go down at the bottom and move in this direction, and I needed to press under 3 adjacent sides, all right? It's going to cover that raw edge. It's going to be finished here, finished here. It needs to be finished there as well because there's nothing else going to cover it here, right? Okay. The next piece is going to go here. So you can see we're going in kind of a counterclockwise rotation. It's sort of like building a log cabin if you want to think of it that way. This one is also folded on 3 different sides. Side, adjacent, adjacent, and down it goes. So the finished edge is down here, here, and here, because again, it's overlapping. Nobody's going to be overlapping him here, so that edge needs to be finished. The last one is going to go up in the top, and so that's the one that you saw here where it needs to be folded on all 4 sides to cover the raw edge here, the raw edge here, a little bit of raw edge there. We need to have everything nice and covered. Okay, so we put that down like that. So there we go. Now, with this size project, I find that they stay pretty well on that base. They kind of stick to the batting. However, if you wanted to, you could run a little bit of glue along the edges just to keep them in place as you put them down. For me, I like to use seam-aligned glue, so I would have just put a few dots here, press it down, and it would just hold it in place. So that's not a bad idea to do that so that things are going to stay where you want them to stay, because already this little guy's misbehaving and moving over just slightly. Okay, so we got them down there, but we do need to do something to keep them in place permanently, right? And that's where your hand stitching comes in. So the first thing that I did actually is I put my button in the center. So the little elephant that you see here, here's another one. Here's a nice heart, and I would put that in the center and stitch it down. So that's going to kind of hold everybody in place to start with, right? So to do that, I picked a color that I thought would kind of match. I've got kind of a long thread here. Don't need quite this much, but anyway, let's pull it down a bit. And, you know, again, I can just put this sort of in the center. So let's get this button sewn down. There's only 2 holes in this one, so that makes it fairly simple. Probably the hardest part for me is always finding the hole in the button from the back. So we can kind of flip it over and find out where was that knot. Oop. So the holes in this are quite large. So I am trying to keep close to, you know, the bottom edge of the top hole and the top edge of the bottom hole, right? To get it in nice and tight, because if I moved it, you know, out, the button will jiggle around probably more than I would like. Okay, so I'm using this number 8 pearl cotton to sew the button on, so I don't need to put too many strands. I think 4 will do it. To keep that in place. Yep, looks pretty good. So I can just go over, I should say, to the back and go under my threads. Now I don't always knot my stitches when I'm finishing, but I will in this particular case because I want to keep that button on really well, and it is a bit heavier, so it might have a tendency to kind of pull away if I just kind of threaded my threads underneath previous stitches. Okay, so there we go. I've got one part of it done. Let's just cut off that excess there. Okay, there's my little heart button in the center. Great. Now I want to stabilize this block. I want to make sure that I've got the rest of these squares. Well, they're not squares, rectangles. I'll call them squares, but anyway, they're rectangles. These pieces of fabric. There we go. That's what they are. I want to make sure I've got those all down and they're going to stay in place, right? So what I want to do is I want to take a running stitch around the outside, as I did here. All right. So that's what I'm going to do next with my next needle. So I'm going to use this milliner's needle that I've got here set up, And I've got it, it's a different color thread. It's hard to tell, but it is a different color thread. You can see the two different colors. They look more obvious there than when you put them down on the fabric. But I'm going to start here somewhere in the middle-ish. Okay, I don't want to necessarily start a corner. And again, I have a knot in the back of my thread to keep it in place. Okay, and I'm just going to go along here. I tend to take individual stitches when I'm doing my handwork. I don't tend to what they call rock the needle and load up a bunch of different stitches. I find that hard for me, so I don't do it. And I've got a problem here. I can see already that this little guy, I have pulled him away somehow. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go back over here. I'm just doing a running stitch, by the way. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. Here we go. And I'm going to take a longer stitch. I could take my stitch right out. Probably a good idea to do that. Let's just make sure he's covering. I'm not sure what happened to him. He was covering just fine before, but he's decided to get a little ornery on me. Okay, let's get them in there. There we go. There we go. So, big stitch. So, that's okay. I can take whatever stitch length I want. So I start with a big stitch. Guess what? I'm going to continue with those big stitches, I should say. This is not what I normally would do. That's not quite as big. But I'm trying to run this in, catching those folded in edges, right? You want to catch those and making my way along. So I would just keep doing this as I go along until I've done the whole edge, much like what I've done here, okay? So that will keep everything down in place, all right? Now, the next thing you can do, and you can have a lot of fun here with different stitches. Here I did kind of a circle, and again, doesn't have to be perfect, but I did this kind of circle using a chain stitch. You could use a back stitch, you could use a running stitch, you could do French knots around there if you wanted to. You could do whatever you want to do. So, what do I want to do on this one? I'm not going to finish all this. I'm not going to put you through watch me do all that. But what do I want to do here? Well, what about if I went in here and did something like this? I'm going to do like just a straight stitch, a running stitch you might call it. And I'm just going to kind of go back and forth around that center heart. Okay. No particular shape, just kind of going back and forth, but something that encircles it, even though I'm not stitching exactly a circle. It's going to be close to that, but just back and forth stitches on a slant, as you can see here. You might call these seed stitches as well, but you usually have a bunch of them kind of going all over the place. I'm just kind of doing a slanted running stitch. There we go. That's what I'm going to call it. A slanted running stitch. And we're just going along here to go around that heart. So it just kind of defines the button in the middle. You could use something different in the middle if you wanted to. You could use a charm if you wanted to. You could do a three-dimensional embroidery stitch in the center if you wanted to. I think it's nice to have something in the center, and because I happen to have just a few buttons, all kinds of fun ones, I think this is a fun project to display those. Okay, so we're just kind of going along here. So you can just have fun with this. You can do whatever you want. It's just a nice, calm, slow stitching. It's a way to practice some stitches if you want to. A nice meditative kind of thing to do. Something to do in the evenings. You could do this while you're watching television if you wanted to. Can't really do it when you're reading. You could do it listening to an audiobook though. That would be good, wouldn't it? Okay, let's get this over here. And so as I'm tacking these down or making these stitches, I am tacking down the fabric underneath. So sometimes it's a little harder to get my needle through because I'm going through several layers. Don't forget there's batting and backing underneath there at a minimum, right? And then I may have several layers depending on if I'm hitting the pressed in edges or not too. That would be extra fabric. So I'm probably going through at least 4 layers of something, whether it's fabric or whether it's batting and fabric. A bunch. And let's see here, I'm going to go over here a bit more. And we're almost done this little kind of whatever circular kind of thing I'm doing around here. It's kind of like a circle, but it's not really a circle, is it? But it does go around my heart. So we've got something like that, okay? Not quite as fancy as the chain stitch for sure, but you can do whatever you want, right? Okay, so I've got something like that. Then I need to do more stitches around. So again, I could do whatever I wanted to do in that area. Maybe I want to just do some longer stitches here. Okay, maybe I just want to do a few stitches like this, not like that. There we go. Okay, maybe I'm just going to do some side-by-side stitches here like this to make kind of a ray kind of thing going out. And I could go back on the other side again. A little closer would be good. Still not quite as close as I wanted. You know why? Because I forgot to put my glasses back on. Oh my goodness. I can see what I'm doing, but a little easier with these. Okay, so I could kind of do something like this and just kind of go, you know, out towards the edges on a bit of an angle. And I could keep doing that with different lengths of stitches. They don't have to be all the same length either, of course. So, you know, you could keep doing that, and you could keep just going out around there. You could do something like the French knots. The French knots are very fun, of course, to do. What if you wanted to do something like, maybe you wanted to make a flower, you know, like lazy daisy stitch going on over here, right? Something like that you could do, which is like a single chain stitch, really, right? You could do something like that and do a bunch of them to make little flowers if you wanted to. And you could put some French knots in the center. That's always fun. So you could do something like this. Let's just make a few of these so you can see what I'm talking about. The possibilities are endless. And it's a way to showcase some of your stitching. And if you wanted to, while I'm using the same color thread as I go along here, if you wanted to, you could change thread colors for sure, right? Like, so if I'm making this little flower kind of shape here, I could, for example, use something different in the center. If I wanted to do those French knots in the center, I would probably do them in a different color. But you could just keep going like this. Let's see if we just do, leaving a little bit of a space in the center, because I'm keeping in mind that I want to do some French knots in there later on, right? We could do this with just 4 petals. Usually I do them with maybe 5. I like to do odd numbers. I think those look kind of cool when I'm doing various things. But if we wanted to do just 4, I'll get this guy over here, something like this. And I'll take that up. Get my thread. My thread is misbehaving on me. Here we go. And do something like that. Okay, so we'll just finish this little guy off. And then, like I said, I could go back and put some French knots in the center. So maybe I want to do, you know, a flower here, maybe in the 4 corners, maybe only here, and do something totally different on the other side. But whatever you want to do, it's a great way to use up some scrap fabric. When it's done, it's done. You know, it's all done. You don't have to do any binding or anything like that. So that makes it really nice. And it's lots of fun to do different stitches on here and use different color stitches. So it's a good way to try out different threads too. And you might want to try different thicknesses. I said this is a size 8 pearl cotton. See what things look like with a 12. See what they look like with a 5. Try some embroidery floss. It's just a really fun, calm, easy project to work on. Uses up some of your scrap fabric, scrap batting as well, and allows you to practice some of your decorative stitches. Now I want to say a big thank you and a shout out to my Patchwork Pals. These are people who are in my Patchwork Pals YouTube membership, and their small monthly fee helps to support my Chatterbox Quilts YouTube channel. They get lots of fun perks, they get early access to my videos, and if you would like to support my channel as well, you can do so by joining the Patchwork Pal membership. Just click on the join button below any of my videos. You'll get all the details. You could even become a Patchwork Pal today. Now I talked about French knots, and I showed you I've done a lot of French knots in here. They can become a bit addictive, but I didn't explain how to do them, did I? Well, don't worry. I've got you covered. Check out this video that has all the details that you need. And for more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.